本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。
What's good, Internet? It's Monday, October 17th, and you're listening to Waypoint Radio, episode 516. I'm your host, Rob Zachney, and I'm joined by Ricardo Contreras.
It's
Patrick
Monday.
Wow. Cado just...
Sorry. I thought Ricardo was panicking, and so I just moved on. I was like, oh, they weren't ready.
I was trying to figure out the best. I was trying to figure out
watching the
Garfield.
podcast zoom down the road. Ricardo stopped dead in the middle of it, eyes glinting.
I was trying to figure out how Garfield I wanted to go because it's Monday and that's not usual for us. But it's not Monday really. It's Thursday, so I had to dig a little deeper than I thought.
So we're recording this on a Thursday. It's going up on a Monday, so everything is
it's all topsy-turvy.
And Renata Price, how are we coping today?
I'm fine. I'm normal.
Thank God. At least.
Do we want to go that far?
I'm normal. Yeah. Listen, ask me anything. I'm normal. I'm cool.
You know what? One of those boxes that was stacked up behind you. I don't know if it's put away, but it is further down. The tower has moved closer to the floor.
I'm doing laundry tonight. Jesus Christ, that's my laundry bin that I hand wash my clothes in, you fuck.
I am absolutely...
Don't take out your laundry anxiety on me. I'm just pointing out things. Sorry, Rob.
So, this is also touching on a sensitive point for me because my parents visited before we went up to New Hampshire for a getaway. I see them like once a year. But it was the oh shit, like make it look like different people live here. Type thing before my parents arrived to sort of stay the night. So it was frantic, like deep cleaning of the apartment.
The question is, do you enjoy that process where you arrive at a house that you wished it looked like that more often, or you're content with its current state, but don't want them to see that state, that status quo?
Okay, how do we so I like that we got
because you know what I mean? Like sometimes when like you're throwing a big party or something, like it actually 7 things that I've been meaning to do, like now I have to do them because they are embarrassing me and like before people have to see it. Now I'm finally gonna like all this shit on this table behind me. Like it's just my office. No one ever sees it. No one comes in my office when we have people over. But when people come over, it's like finally, okay, I'm gonna put that stuff in a box and hide it in a closet.
So I guess there's a couple things here. One is I do like that I actually talked about this with MK like about 2 hours before my parents got here. We were both just like drenched in sweat from the last minute. Like this has gotta go. Just like we're absolutely, it is like, getting rid of evidence before the cops show up, basically. Like, just like, one person's flushing just continuously. The next person is like running the UV light over the crime scene. But, I sort of mentioned this. I was like, we never would have done this for ourselves. We never would, we would not have gone to this effort. We would have just lived like this, in this filth, if this external pressure wasn't here.
So this is my actual coping skill for this shit. Keeping my apartment, I invite people over. Or like when it comes to like the room in which I live, like my girlfriend visits or like I go on a date with someone, like that is the clock upon which I function, where it's like, and that's the problem. My girlfriend hasn't been able to visit recently, and I haven't been going on any dates recently, and so my shit's all fucked. My schedule's ruined. I live in squalor.
Yeah, the other aspect of this was, so like as part of this, like we're really deep cleaning the apartment, and we came to terms with the mice are in places we did not know about, that wasn't like not awesome discoveries. And 2, it was one of those things where you did not have to scratch like deep, like far below the surface when we realized like we've had a suspicion that like there's this arc you go through with cleaners where they start adding more and more clients, and you just start noticing that the cleaners like visits like start wrapping up way faster. And you're like, wow, they just really got this place down to a science. But there's a point where it crosses into, I don't know that you could have really done much in the 15 minutes you were there.
15?
Like, yeah. And so when we're doing this whole process, like it was, you know, they do most of the vacuuming. So like we look under the couch and it's like, this has clearly not been vacuumed in a year. And so it's like one of those things where now it is sort of posing a problem of like, do we try to raise this with the cleaners, or do we just sort of complete the cycle of life and like find different cleaners? Because this is an inviolable law with this business model. Is like cleaners come in, they do a good job, but the easiest way to make more money as a cleaner is to add clients. And so suddenly you start seeing the cleaners like for shorter and shorter periods as they are moving through. And so like it feels like shit. We worked with these people for like 2 years, but also it was like, oh, this isn't good. Like this is for what we are paying. These are not things we should be finding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's plunged us into a Larry David-esque like comedy of manners. Like how do we address this? Or do I just continue being like, you know what? I am happy to pay for a terrible job to avoid feeling like an asshole.
See, this is the inverse of my salaried housekeeper experience, where we lingered. We cleaned the shit out of some buildings slowly. As slowly as possible, because if we did it at the pace everyone else, if we did it at our actual pace, they would have given us like 10 more buildings to work on. No, we're gonna clean the fuck out of this room. I'm gonna scrub every centimeter so I don't have to walk to that apartment 13 feet away. Not doing it.
Well, the other thing that like has been lingering in the back of my mind like for about a year, and this is another part of the life cycle of like working with a cleaning business. You stop seeing the original cleaner and they just start managing teams of people, and the teams of people like tend to like, there tends to be like a rapid turnover, and they all tend to like only speak the language of the country of origin of like the head cleaner you started working with. And there's this part of me that's like sitting in the back of my mind, like, are these cleaners being paid fairly for what the total cleaning bill? You know what I mean? Because it's all going to the person who owns the business. Mm-hmm. And I'm just sitting there being like, I know what I pay. Do they know what I pay? Like, do they know the revenue they're bringing in? So like you end up with like, now you're sliding bigger and bigger tips like across the table just to like try to balance it out. But the entire thing is just like this nest of like, you know, fundamentally, we uncovered evidence that like one of the reasons the mice are so comfortable here is that despite the fact that cleaners come through here weekly, the mice are not troubled by their presence or the presence of their vacuum cleaner. So it's one of those things where we're kind of sitting there being like, I don't want to have to like learn Portuguese so I can like argue with a cleaner. But it's coming to that point.
Men would just rather learn Portuguese than have a confrontation with their cleaner about vacuum under the couch.
I just don't understand how sometimes Spanish and Portuguese are perfectly intelligible to each other, and at other times it's like
it's impossible.
Cado's shaking their head.
And there's every like other word is like, oh, that's the same. Oh fuck, what the fuck are you saying?
Yes. I don't understand how I can tell them like, okay, like this, go to this room, but don't clean this room. I don't understand how all that is intelligible. And then I'm like, hey, the glass on the mirror is cracked. Don't worry about it. And I don't understand how like glass and mirror are completely different.
No.
And I'm just like, well, I can't even begin to tell you what the word is. And Google's no fucking help because it's just like throwing up a usage of glass at the wrong context. And they're just like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
So it I'm sitting there, I'm like, I just don't understand. I feel like we understand each other, but then yes, every other word, it is like a chaos element is introduced. And so you end up playing charades. But so like exhausted from that, and then going up to New Hampshire. I was staying at the I had a very Alan Wake time up in the woods.
It took me a moment to figure out your tweet. Like, I just like read it without processing it. Like, freaking as you search through Twitter, you're not actually doing context. You're just scrolling through, and I see the picture, and I see Frank, I saw you use an emoji, and I'm like, what? Like, Rob is not an emoji person, and so I like scrolled past it. It's like, pretty photo, and then I was like, but he wrote like 3 lines. He's doing a bit, and it took me a while to process the bit.
Went to a really goddamn picturesque lake in New Hampshire.
Are you sure it was a lake?
That could have been an ocean.
Shut the fuck up.
Had high hopes that Mina would discover she's a water dog. We did not discover that.
Oh, no.
We discovered.
Well, how cold is that water?
It's pretty cold, but I think it's mostly Mina's very fastidious, and so like the fact that like brackish puddle was what the shore vibe kind of was just turned her off it completely. Like she looked at that lake. Like it was just an absolute disgusting mess that I needed to clean up personally before she would go any closer to it. But yeah, but I was absolutely ruined the entire time I was there because it turns out I have become an old man who is completely dependent on his fucking CPAP machine to live. And I forgot one little component to that little fucker.
Oh no.
And so I couldn't use it. And I was like, I never even wanted to use a CPAP machine. Surely someone as robust and young and vital as I am will thrive on this clean night air in New Hampshire.
It's the toxins that have been messing me up. The city toxins.
The city smog.
So I snored so hard that every time I woke up, my throat felt like there were knives in it.
No.
Oh yeah.
You've invented a new kind of fucked up to be.
Yup. Snored so hard I I hurt my throat and somehow my ear canal. Where I was just I woke up praying for death, and then I would check a little fitness tracker, like, how am I sleeping? And it's like, you're not. Effectively, you're not. Try to grind through the night, wake up. It's the tracker's like, congratulations. In those 7 hours, you got about 35 minutes of sleep. And I was like, cool. So that's how this trip is going to be. So I need a vacation for my vacation. I am trying to be present around my parents, see them once a year, and I'm just clinging to these cups of coffee and just trying to get figure out something, anything to say. They're like, what do you want to do? You want to go hiking? And I was like, absolutely not. No, that sounds like the worst thing. How about instead you guys hang out here and watch me gargle warm salt water?
If you snore so hard you shred your throat, you may be approaching 40.
Thanks. Fucking... What's his name?
Was that
Jeff?
Jeff Foxworthy?
That was a Jeff Foxworthy.
Was that Jeff Foxworthy?
Yep. I cannot believe Ren is the one making Jeff Foxworthy jokes on this podcast.
It's a good bit, though.
Yeah, it's funny.
If your porch collapses and kills more than 4 dogs, that was a good one. That's an all-timer.
Oh, Jesus.
So yeah, but anyway, my time in forest hell is over, and now it is almost time for save point heaven. So
vacation from your vacation.
I'm sure, you know what? I'm sure that's exactly how it's going to feel. Just absolutely washed from hell trip in New Hampshire, a week in New York, doing save point production and then save point. I'm sure I'll be mightily restored by the end of it. But I may suffer. But my suffering, all of our suffering, is to the benefit of our audience and to the benefit of the National Network of Abortion Funds. So, Patrick, you put in, everyone's been putting in tons of work, especially while I was gone, It feels like I left and it was like, I don't know if Save Point's going to happen this year. And now it's like Save Point is fucking happening this year.
It is. Yeah. 19th, 20th, 21st, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 10 a.m. Twitch.tv/Waypoint. Yeah, we just had a meeting where we more or less finalized the schedule in terms of things that we're
as
gonna
final as a Save Point schedule can really ever be.
This feels pretty. We are like as prepared as we've ever been for one of these things.
It's just inevitable that something will slip on purpose. Like it'll be a good choice to make, but it will always change. Yes. It's always mutable.
Yes. I mean, who doesn't want to watch the Waypoint crew play Uno? I do.
I'm excited.
Listen, we don't even have to pay the tax this stream. We got that shit out earlier in the year. The tax is done.
You can't be promising we don't have to pay the tax like before we even like start building a set. Have you never done a production of Macbeth?
I was gonna say, Ren's out there saying like really excited to be in this production of Macbeth on stage.
Sorry, as you were saying, Patrick.
Just delete it from the podcast.
I have confidence in my colleagues.
Right. I'll bleep it. Everyone can guess.
bleep it. Like if we heard it, but if it doesn't actually go out, I think we're good. Yeah, we have a lot of cool things planned. Return the Quarry, play some Uno. We got a Ren's Rentals. We got lots of multiplayer games, other things. I'm not gonna say what it is, but I'm gonna make Rob play a game that I think is going to hurt him in a real place. But it'll be fun to watch. The audience is gonna have a great time watching Rob play a very specific game. But it'll be good. Yeah, we're gonna be going for 3 days. 10 to 6 Eastern, and then taking a brief break and come back and doing various nighttime activities. Some movies, some not movies, as the case may be on Wednesday night. But got a handful of guests, but it's mostly us. Fortunately or unfortunately, it's mostly us. And I'm really excited. It's 3 days. It's the longest one we've done in a while, and I think it's gonna slap. I think we're gonna have a good time.
So that is going to be again starting like Wednesday, running through Friday. Starting at 10 a.m. Eastern and running until who knows when. And then, of course, the mods will be having blocks outside of our hours as well. So I don't think...
Speaking of people who have gotten too old for it, we've done Waypoint for... Waypoint is 6 years old. You know what we're too old for? Doing streams overnight. So, sorry. I used to be fun that me and Austin have just open up Steam and play weird games at 2 a.m, but... What if we didn't do that anymore? Is where I'm at now.
I need my CPAP time.
Yeah, make sure you got those parts, Rob.
It was instructive. It was it made me realize I really need to pack. Like I basically just need to have a travel kit instead of the thing where you're dismantling stuff you use every day and packing it all up. Gotta just have a travel kit ready to pack because that's where the mistakes happen.
Yes, the amount of over time, like the place my family is in Wisconsin, the amount of money I've spent just buying duplicates of things that you pack, mostly for the children, is like, you know what? Just buy a second one. Leave it there. I am tired of going into a tizzy and then having to drive, 30 minutes to a Walmart to buy something crucial for someone. So I'm a big believer in the duplicate of a necessary item, even if it feels sort of silly sometimes.
So the real hell, honestly, well, I guess MK was dead asleep, dealing with migraine stuff from having cleaned the entire apartment, and I damn near texted Ren pictures of the 2 attachment points. I was missing an adapter. And to be like, can we figure out a MacGyver-esque solution to make this hose socket on to this articulated mask joint? Let me show you what's in the kitchen. Is there something we could do with these plastic bags, a cookie cutter, and a rubber band to make
Rob
these things
Rob whittling a piece of plastic in the kitchen, trying to make it fit.
I think it would have been viable. You should have. I would have helped you MacGyver this.
Damn, see, you know what? People said you're never going to find a use case for a 3D printer. Oh, really?
So what you're saying is You need a portable 3D printer.
If I packed my 3D printer, and if it, and crucially,
3D
it
printer
would
is a
have to be one that
machine,
could make medical grade plastic.
right?
Yeah, that won't release shreds into your.
Also, we all know that fucking 3D printers are usually very sturdy and don't mind being bumped at all, and that doesn't throw anything out of whack when you are trying to print something. So like, it'll just toss it in luggage. It's fine.
Jesus. So yeah, but anyway, look forward to Save Point next week. We're all excited for it. This is our biggest show of the year. It's been the longest we've done person in ages. It's going to be a blast. So stay tuned for that. So Patrick, we've got some news here. News continued to happen, as is its wont. Can you tell us a bit? I've been seeing a lot of chatter about phone requirements being increasingly like obstructive when it comes to games, and it seems like this has come to Modern Warfare as well.
Yeah, we talked about this in a previous podcast in which Ren detailed the litany of ways that Overwatch 2 was having a pretty rough launch, and the one that resulted in headlines of Blizzard hates poor people was... Oh, go ahead, Ren.
It's just worth noting this has since been fixed, but yes.
Okay, but these were the headlines coming out amongst many other gripes in which you could not use, but they were using phone authentication for people who wanted to play the game, and they were not allowing prepaid phone plans to qualify for that, which was hurting a lot of folks that don't want to pay, for a regular monthly cellular bill. So Ren, you're saying this has since totally been squashed?
I believe so. Yeah, I got a press email a couple days ago that was like, "Hey, listen, we have tamped this down. They have patched it out. I can pull up the details as you talk about."
Yeah, if you want to do that, while I point out that according to there's an article for PC Gamer pointing out that Modern Warfare 2 now has the same requirement. Now, granted, this is coming under the same company, albeit a company in the in the process of being in theory acquired by Microsoft, but that yes, there's a line in the phone notifications for Modern Warfare 2 that Modern Warfare 2 is also going to require a phone number, and specifically will not. I think the line here is, quote, "Mobile phones with prepaid plans may not work with the phone notification service." And I guess during the Modern Warfare 2 beta, there were folks that tried to use prepaid plans, and it did not work.
So the update is, according to an email I got from a PR person over at Blizzard, they are removing the requirements for existing Overwatch players.
Right. So I think that's actually where we stood when we recorded it. Was they were
really? Okay.
They panicked and were like, okay, we'll let existing Overwatch players in, but new Overwatch players are going to still require the phone requirement. And does it have any clarification on whether they'll be able to massage that for prepaid plans, or are they just saying, fuck it?
It looks like we will make further adjustments in this is from a forum post that Overwatch did. We remain committed to combating disruptive behavior in Overwatch 2. Accounts that were not connected to Battle.net, as well as new accounts that still have to meet SMS Protect requirements, which helps to ensure we're protecting our community against cheating. If players are caught engaging in disruptive behavior, their account may be banned whether they have a new account or not. As a team, we will keep listening to ongoing feedback and will make further adjustments in this area if it's required.
If it's required.
There was also that wild bug. I think it's been fixed. I don't know if at this point if refunds have been issued, but there was a bug in Overwatch that basically, I believe the way the bug was working was in chat, like that was causing the interface to continue moving around.
Yeah.
And it was possible by accident to be typing a chat message and to purchase something in the store.
Yes.
And so people were buying cosmetics by just typing in chat. And when the bug has since been fixed quietly, but at least as of when I last saw, Blizzard hadn't issued like a public statement. Maybe that'll change by the time this podcast comes out. But people who were seeking out refunds were told, well, those things are final. And that's like a wild thing. That really feels like customer service not understanding what occurred and like in general, like being against issuing refunds, which is not uncommon. Like few things are like Steam, in which you just basically hit a button and you get a refund. Like almost every other company drags their feet because there is no like, legislative like policy that says companies need to offer a refund. It's but that's like both very funny and very shitty that is also, but it feels is indicative of the real messiness that has come out of this launch. But yeah, I don't know. I hope we cyberbully these companies into stopping this. I understand where they're coming from on using this to, solve the problem of people. What was the smurfing? As we explore it, I get it. That seems like a really difficult problem to squash.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't seem like the solution.
Buff Smurf Scrub Nerf, baby. Actually, speaking of Overwatch and Activision-Blizzard, there's also a new trial against Activision-Blizzard, which became...
Right, you wrote about that for us.
Yes. It is actually being led by the attorney Lisa Bloom, who's like a pretty well-known sexual harassment, like attorney who focus on sexual harassment on both sides of those cases occasionally. Has represented a lot of high-profile clients, and back in December of last year held a press conference with a woman she has gone on to represent about some allegations towards the company, and called for more employees to reach out to her for representation. And that first of those cases has gone, the complaint has been sent in and alleges some pretty grim shit, I would say. So the Activision-Blizzard trials are continuing, and there was also another new trial pushed by the EEOC like 3 weeks ago, back at the end of September. They are doing another complaint, this time pushing Title VII claims.
And these trials all tend to dig up just like absolutely awful interpersonal texts and emails from like work and between like supervisors and employees, right? Like that's kind of one of the things that emerges, is regardless of how the trials tend to shake out, they do tend to unearth just a really nightmarish glimpse through the keyhole into like what is going on inside these companies between people in power and people under them.
Yeah, this one in particular is I would say grim. There are some real choice lines in this complaint, which, if you want to read the complaint, it is also linked and embedded in our piece, so you can go and like actually read the complaint yourself on our website.
I guess, speaking of like court proceedings, Patrick, so like the union busting allegations around Nintendo sort of came back up as well this week.
Yeah, and more or less, I think, are headed to a conclusion. So for context, a QA worker who was previously anonymous, but then since came forward, I believe to Axios, Mackenzie Clifton, is a contract worker, which is important. Nintendo, like many, not just video game companies, but this is very prevalent video game companies, especially in QA, in which they outsource a lot of that work to external contractors, so they don't actually have to treat them like employees. Not necessarily that being an employee means you are treated with the best treatment, but it is different than a contractor. You're in pretty much any and all cases, even the best of companies, being a contractor is you prefer to be the employee. And so Clifton was alleged they were fired for supporting a labor union. They alleged that Nintendo was, engaging in a sort of form of union busting. And Nintendo disputed this, at one point telling Polygon that they were fired for divulging confidential information. And then this, this became a labor dispute that has kind of gone back and forth, especially as the contractor came forward to try and sort of impress a more high-profile PR campaign, probably to try and force Nintendo into taking some sort of action. And Nintendo ended up settling with Clifton, paying. Clifton had wanted a personal apology from Doug Bowser, the president of Nintendo. That was what I thought to be a very funny requirement in their settlement talks. As far as I know, it is unclear whether that personal apology happened. My guess is not. That was just a trolling bit, but it's a very good one. And Aston Carter, which is the QA firm that contracts with Nintendo, is taking liability for the settlement. There is $25,910 in back pay, damages, and interest, according to the settlement documents. And Nintendo has to post a notice. This is according to the Polygon story. But quote, both an email and on-site at its office informing its QA workers of their rights under the National Labor Relations Act. The notice must be posted in full for 60 consecutive days. And then Nintendo released a statement as follows. Quote, Nintendo is thankful that a resolution was reached in the NLRB matter so that we can continue to focus on ensuring that our working environment remains welcoming and supportive for all employees and associates. That approach is fundamental to our company values. As part of the public settlement, all parties remain obligated not to disclose Nintendo's confidential business information and trade secrets, which are paramount to our development process and product offerings. Kind of sounds like the way to read that statement is you said some stuff publicly that we didn't like. You hit us with the union charge and response. We would like this to go away. So here's 30 grand so this can go away. And that seems to be where we end up here. And I think but like the broader takeaway is the video game industry, like most industries, is going to continue treating its contract workers like shit unless applied any measure of pressure as occurred here.
Yeah, it's like I think part of it is these companies, like in general, there's kind of two tracks that they tend to take. I mean, part of it is they want to make it seem like, you know, raising these issues will be futile in terms of like achieving the end you want. But then, boy, they sure do want to make these things go away as well, and make them disappear. And like it's funny seeing companies try to sort of like maintain that twin track approach. But I'm not sure how viable it is. I'm thinking partly about an Apple store just unionized, right? And now sort of Apple, I think, is pointedly giving benefits to every other store, but the one that unionized.
Yeah, I'm fully up on. I know that Apple is going through that with a number of stores. Starbucks already did that, right? They did the same thing where they extended benefits to a bunch of non-unionized stores, saying, well, we just can't. Well, we're in the middle of negotiating a contract. We certainly could not extend these benefits to you. It seems like a pretty common tactic.
But also, you might as well just like hang a flashing sign on that says like,
things could be better.
Yeah, there is quite a bit more that we could be giving up. We could be doing quite a bit better, and unionization is pushing it to us. But now we are trying to.
It's all low hanging fruit too. It's not even though it's like massive reform or revolution in pay and benefits. It's stuff that's on the table. They just don't want you to look at the table.
Yeah.
Right. It's never the stuff that like an actual union addresses, like ever, like especially in like terms of like day to day. In terms of day to day, like the things that a union can do for like altering, you know, for example, at a Starbucks, the like workflow there is way more significant than anything the company will ever fucking offer you.
Well, right. It's always most commonly, would you like a little bit more money and some more days off, and just hoping that's enough to dissuade people from pressing the issue further.
And then Patrick, one last thing, just regarding like the fallout from like the end of the Stadia era. You know, we were saying like a lot of other games exist on other platforms, etc. But you know, you had here in the show notes. There's one game that's just like only on Stadia.
I mean, there are a number of games that are exclusive to Stadia, in which developers are trying to jump through the hoops to possibly have a future for those games, like Q Games, known for the Pixel Junk series, most famously, had a Stadia exclusive game that they are trying to negotiate to be able to take off of Stadia and like have to own and put on a different platform. They successfully did that with the Tomorrow Children just recently, which was a PS3 like creation collaboration. I don't even know what that game actually is. Like I've seen screenshots of it, but I've never actually played it myself. But I know the people who played it quite liked it. I think Austin ranks among them. I feel like Austin has talked about that game before, but and they managed to convince Sony to give them the rights to that so they could re-release it, despite the fact that Sony had shut down the servers for it. But there's a game like I didn't play this game. It's from Splash Damage, who what's the most recent thing Splash Damage has done that people would actually know, because I really doubt it's this game Outcasters on Stadia. They collaborated with the Coalition on Gears of War. What's the last original game they made? Well, Enemy Territory
Brink?
Quake Wars.
That's
That's one.
Yeah, I mean, the Splash Damage is like a studio that.
Brink, right? Yes.
Yeah, the Enemy Territory, like coming out of sort of the mod scene around like Quake stuff.
Gears
and-
Tactics.
Yes. Gears Tactics, and that's a great game. Gears Tactics is a great game. But yes, they do come out of the Quake mod community. That's how they kind of got formalized as a studio. So they put out a statement that said, "Dear Stadians, it is with a heavy heart that we inform you that we do not have plans to bring Outcasters to other platforms at this time. Outcasters was designed and built exclusively for Stadia, with many of its systems heavily reliant on the platform, significantly increasing the complexity of the work required. We still firmly believe that cloud gaming is a bright future in our industry, providing easier access to games than ever before. We are encouraged to see that other platforms still champion the cause. As our final thank you to all who support us, we put together a short video showing a rare behind-the-scenes look at the various stages of development of Outcasters from its humble beginnings to today. Thank you, Splash Damage." Maybe the case that game didn't catch fire, and that they they crunched the numbers and said, it's like, we could do this, but it's not worth it. And that is totally understandable. It is not this studio's job to port their game for the historical record, but because alongside Stadia going under, it's not like Google announced, and by the way, we're releasing like the executables for these games so that people can maintain them and possibly, at least for history's sake, have a copy of them. Like, this game is just going to disappear absent Splash Damage like sliding a hard drive over to Frank Cifaldi and being like, hey, here you go. And like, there's no way, like, you can't save a copy of this game. There's nothing, there is nothing you can do. It's just going to vanish. And like, that's just sad broadly. I have no idea if this game was any good, but the fact that this is a possible future for games sucks.
Game looks cute. It's like a
Looks fine.
it's
Splash
kinda
Damage
nifty.
is a good dev. Yeah.
I feel like this is what gets said about a lot of Splash Damage games, is like the people who play them are like, this is really good, but they tend to be making like, their games didn't used to be niche, but it's one of those things where, as like just the sheer scale of a lot of games, the audience they have to attach has become kind of like nichier and nichier.
And they became a collaborative studio that works a lot with, like, they became a support studio, while still remaining independent. I really hope they get to work on Gears Tactics too. That game. Oh,
this game has
I like that game.
Has Twitch integration. Has the audience can choose to do shit to fuck with you.
Rip.
What if we played this on stream? Before this,
RIP to
yes,
Until
Outcasters.
January
Like,
28th.
Exactly. Last
Perfect.
time. Goodbye.
All right,
We should, the same way that people go on when people go on MMOs and like want to be there as like the pixels come crashing down.
Yeah.
Waypoint's going to be there when Outcasters
Yes.
hits the bricks. That's a good idea. That's a good bit. Mark that down in your calendar, Cado.
Yeah.
You should return to that.
Speaking of returning, let's take a quick break and then hit the second half of the show. And we're back. So, Ren, and I think Cado as well, you've been playing a game that certainly looks what I would call fucking awesome.
Yeah, we have to.
Tell me of Marauders.
Rob, okay. So Marauders is an extraction shooter set in a alternative history of the Cold War, in which humanity managed to make it to space and do a lot of shit in space by the 1990s. And then we blew up Earth. Oops. Whoopsie daisy. So Earth is gone. And now what is left are assorted military bases, former prisons, converted space stations filled with SAS operatives, escaped convicts, raiders. The list goes on. And you are a marauder, a member of a pirate organization that is going through, stealing shit, and doing contracts for a variety of factions. Your goal is to pilot your shitty, garbage little ship. It sucks so bad. Ooh, you hate your little ship. It's terrible. It's for little rats. And you take your little spaceship, which looks like a submarine, and you pilot it up to the station. You go on the station, and then you run around with your little rat hands, and you pick up all the items you can, and then you get shot in the back of the head from someone with a rifle, like 30 feet away from you, and then you do it again. It is tremendous.
Kyle, you've been playing a bit as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's it's like, so it's called
Cado, can I ask a
Marauders
question?
because, yeah, what's up?
Have you been playing solo or with a group?
Solo.
Okay, I've also been playing solos.
Yeah.
Okay.
A thing to note about the ship section of this game, right? Like you spawn in on a ship is like that I really love is but it's also has bitten me in the ass once is this you can eject from your ship when you're like being shot or just because you want to breach. You can breach other people's ships, right, in the middle of the air, like a fucking pirate breaching, basically. And it's really interesting that they have these kind of two modes, honestly, of like there's a game plan where you can try to like wait out and like catch people on the way out once they've already looted everything, where you like basically take all their shit and their ship, or trying to. I once got into a fight with somebody who had upgraded a ship and it went poorly. It went extremely poorly, and because they had it was like a frigate. It was like easily twice the size of my ship, and I like ran into them basically on accident because they were hiding very well amongst the asteroids in the field, and like I was like, when I turned to them, they were already smoking. I didn't know what was going on, and
was this the NPC ship?
No, this was all players.
How many people were there?
They were like, well, here's the thing. I got on thinking like I'm solo, right? Like it must be just one player with a fucking. But it turns out I missed this and I didn't realize until I later ended up bailing on the ship itself. Was there were like easily 3 other single player ships that had all been shot down by this one frigate, but everyone had breached at the same time. So this one ship became its own kind of like deathmatch like arena as everyone was trying to steal the giant frigate from whoever owned it. But I took enough damage and I like had too many like good things on me that I was like, fuck it, I'm just out. And like this was after like an hour of like eating shit and like losing, slowly draining all of my resources over time. Right. So at that point I was like, I feel like if I had done that a couple rounds earlier, I might have stuck out for the fight and seen like maybe I can get a couple kills and like it'll be worth it for the XP, because there is an XP like track that it kind of works as a sort of, you can still make progress even if you die by getting kills or like doing certain objectives. There's also contracts, things that you can kind of do that are side objectives that if you end up dying before you extract, it's not a completely lost match essentially, which is really nice for this type of game. Like helps, it's like it doesn't alleviate the tension so much that there is no tension. Like that's still there. Like your items do kind of matter a lot.
But it's not quite the way Tarkov, for instance, delights in being like, haha, you're losing everything.
Yeah. There's like you made negative progress, actually. It's like, no, you can still make some progress in different ways, like in the crafting, like upgrades and in your contracts and stuff like that.
I think it is. I think it is worth putting the actual game part into context here in terms of like where the rest of the genre is at. Extraction shooters, things like Escape from Tarkov, Hunt Showdown are all pretty deliberate games, and I would say that like to a degree, Marauders is deliberate, but it feels so much scrappier, and like that's the thing that sets it apart for me, is that it's using this like Cold War kind of taped together aesthetic to really lean into the scrappiness of its combat. When you are going into a fight, you are frequently the time to kill varies wildly between like if you have a rifle, like a single action bolt action rifle, right? Or a semi-automatic rifle, you can kill people even if they're heavily armored in one headshot, maybe two. If you have an SMG, you can kill an unarmored opponent in like one burst. But they're wildly inaccurate, and these spaces are pretty tight. And so you have these fights where you know that one good burst will kill someone, and one good burst will kill you too. But the weapons are so unreliable that they lead to this like scrabbling kind of combat that will take you through room after room as you're like, okay, cool, I got a couple shots off. I need to run the fuck over here and hope that I can get a better position to maybe get another few shots off. And it creates this really excellent cat and mouse game, which the game manages to supplement with its audio. Like Hunt Showdown, you can hear other players' footsteps. Here's the difference. These maps are so much more vertical than Hunt's. And so you can sometimes hear like half a dozen sets of footsteps and like two other team fights going on the other side of the map. And you're not quite sure where they are. You're not sure if they're on the same floor as you, if they're below you, or if they're above you. And it creates this like really desperate sense of, I need to get shit and get out because there are more people in here than I can deal with. And that sense of scrappiness kind of pervades through every aspect of the game for me. Yeah. In a way that I really love. Cado, for example, one of those ships that you're talking about, those frigates, I came across one that was an NPC ship. And I'm wondering if, because the thing you're describing is that is an event. Is that sometimes you can stumble across a ship that is a actual special operations frigate that you can stumble across. They blew me up almost instantly. And I breached the ship. So did two other players. I didn't know this. And so I'm going through this ship, which had, I believe, 8 NPCs in it. It had 8 NPCs, all of whom had end game armor. Like we are talking armor that like my dinky little pistol, which is all I had because on a previous run, I'd lost all my shit. So all I have is this 1908 Luger with 9mm rounds. And I go in with this Luger. And I start, doing my business in this ship, and I find one guard, and his back is turned to me, and I just unload a full clip as quick as I can. Recoil goes wild. It's enough. 7 bullets into his armor. He drops. He has a rifle on him. I pick up the rifle and I start to gun game my way through this special operative ship being like, okay, cool. Every person I take down, I have to take their weapon and incorporate it into the rest of this fight. And I go through, I take out 9 of the NPCs, and then I hear more gunfire upstairs. And I realize I am not alone in the ship. There are 2 other players. And so I'm fighting. I get up to the 2nd floor of the ship. I see a person. I peek around the corner. Bop, bop, gone. Go further. I get to the main control room. I'm like, great, cool. I've gotten to the helm of this ship. I found the leader. I've stolen the war bonds. I've stolen the supply crates here. I am ready to go. And then someone else walks into the room with me. And I turn with the trench shotgun that I picked up earlier, fire 2 shots, and then I fucking run. I take him out, and then I'm just in this ship alone. Because I run before I realize he's dead. And then the quiet sets in. And I'm like, holy shit, I don't hear any more footsteps. I just soloed a frigate by being the littlest freak who's ever been. And that was the moment that really sold me on the game.
So like that in that scenario where you've totally like cleared the ship.
Yeah.
You've like, what do you get for doing that? Like, because obviously here you did not have to fall back to your ship and make your getaway with like whatever you'd sort of scooped up along the way. You had full control of the frigate.
I couldn't. because
Okay.
this is not the space station. The space station you can evacuate from with you can go back to your ship. I had abandoned my ship to take on a
Okay.
frigate, which is distinct from a space station.
Right.
So I only had what I could carry because the frigate had already been disabled. So I couldn't steal the ship. The ship's broken.
You can't repair
I can't.
it?
No.
Oh, okay.
The style of frigate that I was in, you cannot repair.
Okay.
And I was like, fuck. Well, I gotta go. And so I found an escape pod. But before I went, I loaded up my bag with the best equipment I could. And that was the thing of being like, okay, I've got endgame armor. I've got a really stellar rifle. I don't have ammunition for it because 5.56 ammo is really hard to come by. Actually, no, it's 7.62. 7.62 ammo is really hard to come by. I gotta go. So I fuck off. I leave. I fully kitted out. I feel excellent. I go into my next game and I'm like, I'm kitted out. I'm feeling good. I've got full armor. I walk in. I see one NPC. I'm like, I can handle a fucking NPC. Are you kidding me? I'm a bad bitch. I just took out an entire ship, an entire frigate. Thank you very much. That man had a long rifle. And then he fired 3 shots and I was on a quarter of my health. And he was dead, but I was on a quarter of my health and I was like, I'm fine.
No.
I've got armor.
No.
I didn't bring any med supplies with me.
No.
Because I need space in my bag for looting. I can heal myself. And then another NPC walked in the room and I was like, I've got a shotgun. I'll shoot this dude with a shotgun. And that didn't fucking work. I missed. I missed with my shotgun, and then he shot me, and I died, and I lost all that shit, and it sucked.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, this game rules. The loop actually works, because before then, I had been doing shit runs where I got nothing out of it, and this was the one where I was like, okay, cool. I got something out of this, and then I lost it all. And the loop works.
Yeah, it's really great. Like the I was worried when you were telling the story about you on the frigate that you heard no steps, being like, oh, does this end with someone hiding in a corner fucking getting your ass? Because that's the other thing. It's like you can mostly trust the silence, but like more than a few times I've walked around a corner and been like, oh fuck, there's someone there. That they heard me first, right? Like it's a little bit of like who realizes that they're not alone first will sometimes get the jump, but I do like there's something very interesting going on too with the spaces where like a lot of the maps have a very like some of them are mostly corridors and very crowded, but there's a fair few that I played in that have some surprisingly long sight lines around certain corners. Like there's kind of like these, little groups of rooms and then like a long like hallway that will completely change the way you have to like traverse the space. Because you really feel the distance limitations of different guns like very intensely in this game.
The other note is that unlike Hunt Showdown, which has an in-game map, and knowing each map is for me like the key to being a better Hunt player is learning each map in like intimate detail. That has been like one of my favorite things about playing Hunt a lot with Matthew Gault is being like, okay, cool. I know how to orchestrate and like manipulate a fight in this particular location very well. And that's a great feeling. The thing that I find interesting about Marauders is that its maps are mirrored over axes. So like one end of the base looks exactly the same as the other end. And there's like mirrored across like 4 axes or so. And so it means that spaces feel indistinct from one another. And when you're having one of those messy, scrabbling gunfights that I mentioned earlier, you can be sprinting through and suddenly find yourself on the other side of the base in a room that looks identical to the one you started it. And you're like, oh my God, where the fuck am I? And then you check and your oxygen is ticking down. And you're like, okay, I either have to find my way back to where I came from, or I have to hunt down another player, steal their captain's key card, and go out through their airlock. And like that sense of getting lost and getting consumed in these spaces that are so much bigger than you and so much deadlier than you is rewarding in a way that is extremely distinct from something like Hunt. or even something like Tarkov, which encourages like technical mastery. Where Tarkov is like, be a technical master of all of these systems. Marauders is like, improvise in the most chaotic way possible.
Yeah.
Whoever fights the most chaotically will probably win.
I got that one thing you just mentioned, the captain's key card, which is a system that I didn't fully grok, and then I learned the hard way about how those work, because one time I had a like air fight before, like as soon as I spawned in, somebody was already firing on me in the ship. I had this fight. We both basically killed each other, and I saw them eject, but I hadn't destroyed their ship, so I like breached theirs and stole it because mine ship was like disabled and theirs wasn't. And yeah, you see where this is going, Ren. And then I docked at the station, turned around like I always do to make sure I remember where I'm docked, so when I escape the station, I can get back there. Have a amazing run. I had like easily like, I think it was like 6 NPC kills and like 3 like other people kills, and I'm like, okay, that's enough. I'm loaded on a bunch of shit. I'm running back. I get back to the dock. I hit the button to open the airlock. Wrong captain's key card. I'm like, what? What do you mean wrong? Captain's who? And I go back. I have to start crawling, searching, because in this game, basically, you have like a specific item that allows you to exit a space station with a ship, right? You don't need it to fly a ship if you breach it. If you breach it and you get to the controls, you can fly whoever's ship. But once you're at the station, it requires that specific key card that usually the captain holds in order to leave the space station. A thing that I didn't know until then. And then I had like 2 minutes of oxygen left. And I'm just scrambling. I'm like, is one of these dead bodies the motherfucker that owns that ship? I never found out because I tried to pick him up and I ran out of oxygen. I didn't have enough time.
You didn't find an escape pod?
I should have but I couldn't. I didn't know the map well enough to know where they were. Like I hadn't been on this one, and then like I was like, I remember where the bodies are at least. Maybe I can make it back in time.
Stealing someone's ship and leaving the keys behind is such a fucking beautiful way to die. It was such a good
I couldn't even be
phone.
mad. I was just like, damn, I forgot. I forgot my keys.
Yeah. Well, this looks awesome. I'm definitely gonna have to give this a shot. I do love seeing some of the like fun ideas that crop up in places like Star Citizen that will never turn into functional parts of a functional game, just turn into completely independent games in their own right. Where somebody's like, you know what's awesome is like hostile boarding actions. Yeah, and you should just make a whole game about hostile boarding actions and see what happens. I'm glad. I am glad someone did. Ricardo.
Yeah,
I see a game here. It literally has your name on it, but also it just sounds like it had your name on it.
God damn it.
Card Cowboy.
Card Cowboy. This is a very cute and fun little game. Let me get you all a link. Which I forget where I even saw it, but it's like, okay, yes, another roguelike deck builder. I gotta check it out, especially because it was like $3. I was like, oh shit, this is so cheap. Why is this cheap? Let's see if I can talk about this game. But it's really interesting. It's a story of revenge set in a Western, cowboy setting, where you basically start off and like there's a like gunman who killed your father and you're chasing after him. And you have the kind of standard initial setup of like a map with nodes that you pick to go to on a road, like, when you're doing a roguelike. But when you get there, what actually happens is there's like a bit of story text, kind of like the way that events usually work out in like something like, say, The Spire, right? It's all like there's some story set up and then you have to do something. And the thing is that this is every node in this game. And the way that you kind of make your way through this world is that you get like a bit of story information, and you have a choice for like, okay, what of the cards that you have in your hand, because all you have is really just a hand of cards, will you use to make it through this scenario? So one example is you wind up at a farm, and the farmer asks you to like help out basically with their yard work or whatever, and like you have to pick some item that you're holding in order to either help them or try to steal from them, or like it depends. It's all like
Is everything contextual on like a story you're telling about yourself? So I want to read an example from a screenshot I'm pulling from this. So like you find someone. There's a familiar face is like the log line.
Right.
At a crossing on the road, a lone gunman riding a black horse meets your gaze. He speaks through a cigarette hanging from his mouth. Morning. Wait, you know him. When you were 6, he wooed your mom, killed your dad, and kicked your dog. He asks, do I know you? Show him something to remind him who you are. And the cards you have are horse, lasso, and whiskey.
Yes. And so this is actually that specific one is the first that's the first thing that all of these start out with. And
that's the prompt.
that's how every story starts.
Yes.
Okay.
This
Every
is
game opens with the stranger on the road.
Yes, every game's and like this is
who's had sex with your mom and killed your dad. That's how we're starting every one of these
He
stories.
just pitched woo at her. We don't know.
Yeah, woo. Okay.
Okay.
He did kick a dog though. That's just fucking horrendous. I can't believe it.
Wait, so look, I don't know mom and dad's relationship.
Yeah.
Maybe mom should be out exploring. I'm not condemning her.
And so, yeah, so you can see there's like a little square. You drag your card that you're going to choose. And like, there's always, what's great about it is that there is a lot of different cards, and there's always some sort of new response when you place them into whatever scenario. Even if you like see a repeat scenario, you put something else in there, there's like another new thing, and it's all very tongue-in-cheek and goofy, and like they've just like, it's kind of an astounding amount of variance, which is really fun. So like I played it, you can like finish a run of the game in like 20 minutes. So I've played it a couple times at this point, and like the second time I spent what's interesting is that you don't get locked out of path choices when you make a choice to go down the branching nodes of the map, right? You can actually just go back and choose the other one just to see what happens at that other node. And at a certain point, I started doing that just to play around with like, okay, what does this place do? Like, what is the story beat here? What sort of goofy shenanigans will I get up to if I share them?
You're not locked into a single. No. Your run can experience all the multiverse of the run.
Yes, you can just go through
while choosing the canon route that.
Yeah, it's like the routes isn't. It's not like a map with like different routes. It's more like a map, and then you can travel it as if you were traveling down a real map. It's like, just go back down the road and go up the other road instead. It's fine.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot. I'll give one example of an answer that I thought was really funny. Is like one time I went to a farm, and the farm son was there, like hoeing some hay or whatever, and it's asked like, what do you want to show to like help them out or like whatever, and I decided to use the lasso, and then it is like the farmer's son responded, oh, this isn't my first rodeo, and then like it implies that you have a fun time with the farmer's son, and you get a a bonus to your health or whatever, and it's just like, okay, I would never have guessed that would be the outcome for like, I thought I was just gonna help him tie up some hay bales. But yeah, it's very funny and very cute. It's worth checking out. It's $3 on Steam, and it's just like, there's some of the cards are like one time I got a card that was just a man, and I had a little man following me around because I saved him from like a bandit or whatever. And then I ended up using him in the final confrontation with the gunman, and he had a very tragic death in my arms, which gave me a card that said like extra revenge. Like now I have another person to get revenge for. It's that sort of like kind of compounding goofiness that is really, really, really clever and very charming.
So not really a game about dying. It's more about the story. What happens when you die? Like what is
you can die.
How does the game handle fail state?
It's just like you start over, but like the game is so short, it doesn't really matter. It's more like you died this way this time. Try again next time. But
it's less of a punishment as much as just almost a variation on the story.
It's very cute and very funny.
I want to read. So this game's now on Steam, but it started on itch. And I want to read part of the setup for this, and I'll stop. Just stop me when you realize why I'm reading this. There's a very waypointy thing in here. Once upon a time, there was a lone cowboy who set out to get revenge. Like a bloodhound, he scoured the west, determined to find the man who robbed him, come hell or high water. And while this cowboy was just a little guy, he'd end up making some big choices on his journey to change his story in downright mystifying ways. So,
card cowboy, just be a little guy.
That's neat. Now that's on Steam, I'm gonna put that on my Steam deck. This seems like a delightful little
that's perfect
time waster.
Now,
absolutely.
What they need to do is combine this story generation system with Call of Juarez Gunslinger, and then
man, that's a great game.
That's a great fucking game. Oh, it's so good.
One day we'll go back to that one. Like I feel like that was part of too many like video game book clubs of a certain era that it got overdone, but we're approaching. It's been long enough to revisit.
Worth mentioning. I just looked at the itch page as well. The Steam version is an updated version of the thing that was on itch that has, I forgot to mention, full voice acting. A guy reads all of this out to you in a funny Western drawl. It's very good. Yeah.
I love this comment from somebody about their story. Stole pistols at poker tables, freed a bandit, made my horse drunk. 10 out of 10. Would throw my lasso again.
Yes.
But that sounds like you. You may be a card cowboy.
Patrick, I feel like it's not a Western story, but it is about a journey. It is about reckonings. And it's about rats. You've been playing some Plague Tale 2.
Yeah, a Plague Tale Requiem. I believe the first one was a Plague Tale Innocence. Always gotta respect the first installment or a game that doesn't necessarily have a sequel that gives itself
a subtitle. Yeah,
just
like
in case.
I've since like read that is all SEO, basically. Like when you are naming things somewhat generic phrasing, the reason you give it the subtitle is so that it'll better surface like above people searching. You can imagine how a Plague Tale, while itself like a pretty good like name, like adding the innocence means that you're looking for this video game. So this game came out a couple of years ago. I, like many others, quite liked it, even beyond the fact that its broad bit was like, what if you were running and navigating around tens of thousands of horrifying plague-infested rats? The setup of the first game was that there's this family. This is during the set during the era of the plague and like the French Inquisition, and this plague is like roaming through, just really doing a number. But in this game, it is like discovered to be that it has like sort of like supernatural or like bloodline. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on, but it is not just a random, virus that is getting a lot of people really, really sick and they don't know how to combat it. You are a brother and sister. Your brother has been sick since birth, and no one's quite known what to do about this sickness. And the sickness has become worse and worse as they've gotten older. They are a young boy, probably like 10-ish, something like that, in the game. And these rats are, believed to be the ones spreading this plague throughout the cities and the countryside. And you come to discover that actually the sickness that your brother has had that has been plaguing, you might say, your brother, is connected to these rats, to this horrifying disease, And it is part of like a historical like bloodline curse sort of thing.
Wait, but Patrick, he's innocent.
Well, we can be innocent and still guilty, or implicated. Implicated, maybe not guilty. Implicated. Your brother is implicated in the death of seemingly millions, but not guilty necessary, but implicated. So still innocent. The way the game played out was like broadly like a very pretty stealth game with some pretty basic mechanics. Like, come do do you love pushing boxes around so you can climb up a thing?
Not as much as I used to be honest.
Yep. Do you love throwing torches on the ground so you can create spots so you can go past the rats?
I do.
It was it was a game that traded a lot on a really like just it looked gorgeous. The rats were for the time that the game lasted, like the 8 to 10 hours, like the gimmick was good. It was horrifying every single time they showed up. And the notion of like a big part of the game in the original, and this is true in the sequel, is like the rats are afraid of fire. They'll stay away with you like holding a stick if you're throwing like pots that like spread fire on the ground. And that one of the ways there is combat, but like really you're not like, it's a game that once you're caught, like the jig is up, like you're probably going to die. You should go back to the previous sequence and try again. But a whole lot of what you're doing is like manipulating fire to kill the people around you. So like soldiers that are hunting you, well, if you can knock out the land, the stick that they're holding, then the rats will devour them. And when the rat devours a carcass, whether it's a human that was just moments ago living and trying to avoid those rats, or as is very frequent in the Plague Tale games, you're using your not whip, your sure. Why am I blanking on the term? I think you spin it around, you whip a rock. A sling. Using your sling to hit very convenient chains that can be broken with a rock that will drop like a pig carcass on the ground, and like you use that to create like a path through, both to avoid enemies and to avoid the rats. And I thought that game had just enough. It was very rickety, but it had just enough that I got to the end and had a really, really good time with it. And the new game, A Plague Tale Requiem, is more of that. I don't know that its ambitions are far beyond the original game. Its promise is, did you like going in really gorgeous and often grotesquely gorgeous environments while navigating some frequently frustratingly restrictive stealth mechanics? Would you like to do that again? And for the most part, I do, but this game is also longer. In some ways feels more restrictive, or maybe it's just that this game comes actually fairly close to the original game. Like, it hasn't been like 5 years, it's only been a couple of years since that first one. The sequel arrives fairly quickly in the grand scheme of things. And like pretty often, like what I enjoy the most is manipulating. My favorite parts of this game are like trying to navigate the rats. My least favorite parts of the game are trying to navigate the stealth cones of enemies that I cannot tell what they can see, why they can see, and what will trigger them. And this is just not a game where, as we pointed out many times, as Dia has talked about in regards to stealth games. So there are stealth games where when you're caught, you've got options. Dishonored is a great example of this. In A Plague Tale, when you're caught, you do not have options. Like one of the things it does really punishingly is that you'll see like the door you need to get to, and the characters will call it out like, there's the door, brother, we need to get to. And I'll just say, fuck it, let's just book it. Like, I see a line that I can just cut through these 6 enemies. Why would I spend 20 minutes navigating them? Why would I spend 20 minutes throwing a stone to distract them and hope that they don't turn around in time and yada, yada, yada. And you'll run, but the game requires you to have like a 2 or 3 second step on those enemies, because if they interrupt your animation, you will not make it through the door. And like, that's the game's zero-sum punishment for not doing the stealth correctly.
So I'm watching a trailer for this right now. I'm seeing a lot of murder in this trailer.
Yeah.
Like in a like you're doing a lot of. So are you Patrick doing a lot of murder, or are you finding that you are doing less murder?
So the game actually
is advertising.
No, there's a lot of murder. There's a lot of required murder. The game has an interesting gameplay system in which, based on how you're playing, sort of like in Ratchet and Clank, where if you fire a gun enough times, so like, oh, you like this gun, we're going to give you new features for this gun. This game is tracking what you're doing, your play style, and then unlocks upgrades based on that play style.
Mm-hmm.
So if you spend a lot of time killing people, it's going to give you aggression perks that are rewards for that play style. I just got a stealth perk that I forget exactly what it did, but like it just rewarded me because I successfully made it through a stealth section without killing anyone. So it dumped a bunch of points into the system, and you can see the markers going up. It's a pretty neat idea to like actively show the player, hey, we're tracking what you're doing. We can track it, and rather than it being a system of a skill tree, we're just going to passively give you like cool things, similar to like in Oblivion, where like hit A to jump 100 times, and you'll get, it's like a much cooler version of that system.
Right.
But what's also neat, I don't know where this will end up. It is a very blunt instrument currently in the story, but you play the older sister, and the little brother is frequently like separated from you, or isn't really doing a whole lot. They're mostly there as a support, and then occasionally the story will be like, could you please summon a bunch of rats to kill these fuckers so we can get past this sequence, and then you'll get a cool cutscene where it happens. But it's an instance in which this character is cracking under the weight of a mother who wants to hand over the son who is infected to like religious zealots that are going to just lock him in a tower, and a French Inquisition that is constantly hounding them, and she is forced to kill so many people. There's a sequence in this game where she just finally has it. They could leave. They could get out of this area and escape like the 15 soldiers that are tracking them. And she says, no, fuck it. Everyone step in this room. I'm going to whip this rock in your face, and I'm going to make a stack of bodies. And she's screaming as she does. Like, she is having a psychological break. And the voice acting is pretty decent. And they make it like a really interesting plot. Again, I don't know how this is going to land, but they are very clearly making part of this game that they are trying to incorporate the ludonarrative dissonance that is frequently in games like this, in which why did we just murder 45 people? And in this game, they sort of set up, well, you don't have to, but you are going to have to murder a lot of people, and this person is not going to enjoy it. They're going to do it because they're trying to protect their brother. And if someone was to stand in a room and just murder 12 people slinging rocks at their face, probably fuck them up. Probably like actually have like a real long lasting implications on their mental health and well-being. And so there's not a lot of nuance to it, but I will say it's like surprisingly powerful and interesting to see the game acknowledge that and to incorporate it into the story. And I'm curious to see where that lands, because they are making it very obviously like a core part of the arc of the sister. This game is super annoying. I find the stealth stuff to be frequently like infuriating, and yet I'm in the same place I am with the first one. It is astounding to look at. It is, like some of these like country landscapes are just, it's like indescribable. Like, it is just so beautiful. And then contrasted with these beautiful landscapes frequently will then be disrupted by the way the game is scaling it now. It feels like millions of rats. And it has like very good is maybe too much, but like surprisingly good Uncharted-esque sequences where you are just holding down on the analog stick to run from millions of rats chasing you, and like whole cityscapes are being destroyed by these rats. They are just taking castles down with them, and it's awesome. And then like you get to the end of that, and it's like, now do you want to get around, in the parlance of Waypoint, 7 little guys? It's like, no, I don't. Like, I kind of don't. So I may just have to lean into being aggressive, and just ditching the stealth entirely, and just that's going to be my way of mitigating some of this. Is the story seems to be about a character who is slowly losing control over their faculties because they've been forced into a position in which they must kill constantly to save their brother from exploitation from either religious zealots or killed from the government who seeks to lock him up and kill him. So maybe I should just lean into it as the character, and I can use that to sort of tamp down some of my issues with. I just wish the stealth stuff was better. Because the game wants you to do it. Like the aggression is clearly not the intended path. But it doesn't feel sufficiently better than it was in the first game. And my understanding is this game is like twice as long, right? So it's like 15, 16 hours.
Yeah. I mean, the trailer that I'm watching is very aggression heavy, but it's the kind of like stealth, then aggression, then back to stealth. And I wonder if that is where the game actually shines. Like I haven't unlocked it yet, but like there's it's a perk. It's an upgrade path in which you can kick motherfuckers into a fire. Just push them in. So maybe that's the path I'm gonna have to go. So it's one of those, if you liked the first game, this is more of it. If you didn't like the first game, there's nothing for you here. Like there are more pushing crates to jump on top of things. There are more navigating simple puzzles. I like that stuff. Or it's enough, and everything else is working to push me along. But it is more of what you had before. And like I said, if that didn't work before, this one is gonna work again. But if it's been long enough, you're like, yeah, I could do that again. It does this on a grander scale, and I'm quite liking it so far, despite my reservations.
I was sort of, my expectation was fully going to be like, and I'll bet they're really going to like nail an expanded vocabulary of mechanics and such next time around, like more. No. And the fact that it's like the things they're good at, they're great at, but also the things they were weak on, they did not improve. They didn't solve it.
No, I think they've given you. I don't think there was a. It's been a minute since I played the original game, but like in this one, you get access to a crossbow, and I finally have that about 6 hours into the game, and so here is another avenue of death. Yeah. I don't have a ton of the arrows, but it is something I can use.
I am praying next week you come back and it's actually a boomer shooter by the end of the game. Like, and then I found an automatic crossbow, and the game's getting pretty weird.
It's also a game that I might be, because the game seems like it feels very transparently communicating to you, do the stealth, but I'm also have too many ingredients. Like it's a game where you're making lots of like I can create fire that I can either throw with my hand a short distance, throw with oh damn, I forgot the word again. Ren, help me.
Sling.
It's got the bane of my existence. Sling. You can sling it further, but that creates noise. Or you can put it in a pot, and then like that spreads out, in a kind of a circular area nearby to you. I'm just not using that stuff enough, and so maybe I think the game doesn't do enough to be like, hey, maybe you should kill some more. But also that's because like if there's 7 enemies, I don't have enough to kill 7. Or like by the time 3 rush me, I'm screwed. But you can't. They do have new abilities in this one that weren't present in the first game, where you essentially like have. It's not called oil. I forget how they term it, but it's basically like you can put a splatter on the ground and then you can light that, and so you could bait a number of enemies to come near you in order to take them out. I will say that just last little point, because I just reminded it here, is that I did just get access to a feature that the brother has, which is like I hold down on the D-pad, and the game wants to give you like a like a heat map, like where are the enemies around you, like how can we do that? And the game came up with a narrative conceit, which I think is cool, which is the brother is finally just leaning into, I can feel the rats. And so he puts his hand to the ground and can feel the movements of the rats. And then the longer you hold down on the D-pad, the further he can feel the rats out, and the further it will apply that you can see like, a shimmery version of the soldiers. It's very, I was like, look, sometimes you don't need to force this stuff. That's not forced. That's just great.
Does it feel like this game's gonna ever address the fact that your brother does undeniably have some bad vibes?
Maybe the kid just has bad vibes.
Yeah, maybe the kid sucks.
The kid does not suck. The kid has been manipulated since birth by a bunch of bad people.
Patrick,
that said,
the dad says the kid doesn't suck.
But look, but also the kid is responsible for the deaths of millions. So, when the religious folks say maybe we should lock him up in a tower and study him, I don't know if that's that's the ticket, but
you see how you get
if
there.
he was, but if he fell off a cliff and then we studied his body afterwards,
from a utilitarian standpoint, like that would be probably a dub for humanity.
I mean,
yeah,
we there's a sequence in this game where like mild spoilers if you're gonna play this, but like you go to a big city that is supposed to be salvation. 2 hours in, you have killed everyone.
Yeah.
Is the game giving gender bent Last of Us? Like, or is it giving gender fuck Last of Us?
Except Ellie isn't just exuding clouds of plague. This is like if she's just running around like rubbing the little wound on everyone's strings. Or something.
At least in Last of Us, there's the notion that she could be the key to unlocking a great hope. Right. This is the opposite with this little boy. Like there nothing in the game. Again, it's been a minute since I played the original. I don't think there's anything that implies, well, if we finally just understood what he was doing, the rats could help us. No. I think it's just that the rats are bad.
I just mean also in terms of the idea that you are choosing the child over the expense of quite literally every single other human being that exists.
Yeah, no, that is happening here. And I don't know that it's reflected in necessarily the characterization, but the events surrounding you are certainly painting a picture that maybe this is not the route. Maybe that's been addressed though. Maybe it has been addressed that killing him wouldn't solve things. I don't remember all the plot beats from the first one.
I have another clarifying question. Are you like interacting with other do these characters have friends? Have they made like a little group of companions who kind of get churned through by the rats?
Like your family gets slaughtered at the beginning of the first one, and that's why the brother and sister go on the run.
Rip.
And then by the end, you have sort of like I don't want to get into all the stories, but there's like a mixture of family found family. And the first one ends on like a really hopeful note. Like, cool, let's go find a new home. And then the second game is like, nah, like, what if there were more rats though?
Patty, you've been playing something else here. Scorn. You want to tell us a little bit about that before we dive for the question bucket?
Yeah, Scorn is a long in development first person horror I don't know about horror, but adventure game, but is heavily indebted to Geiger. Like, essentially, what if someone took the aesthetic of the alien spaceships and then like made a whole like adventure game out of it? So Scorn is finally coming out. I don't know if it's out. I think it'll be out when this podcast is available. And it's gonna be on Game Pass. I've been looking forward to this for a while. Like, I love that aesthetic. We just talked about Alien. I was reminded how much like that Geiger everything about the vibes on those spaceships and what Geiger contributed is like super cool. And so the notion of, hey, let's just make a whole environment built out of that stuff sounds pretty neat. The setup for Scorn is, well, I don't really know. It's very vague on the details, which is okay at the start, but is increasingly kind of as we go along, which I can get into very briefly. But imagine, the best I can tell is, imagine, so in the Matrix, the robots start harnessing our bodies for the electricity, right? Like, that's how it works out.
Yeah.
What if the robots were harnessing and manipulating our flesh? And so you think you're a human, but then if you were to be ejected from that virtual reality, it would turn out your body's real fucked and has been gutted and transform flesh in bad places, holes in spot where they're not supposed to be, big gaps in your body. Just a real upsetting. If anyone's rewatched the original Hellraiser, Frank, when his flesh is ripped off him and he is reconstructed, it kind of looks like that.
Sick.
And so imagine you woke up to discover, oh, this is me now. Now, I don't know. I'm not implying there's a virtual reality. I'm just sort of like, that's kind of, you just sort of wake up, your flesh is a nightmare.
I'm Draugr now.
Yeah. And then you begin exploring. And I've not followed this super closely other than seeing the trailers, and all the trailers are really about, look at this cool environment you're going to explore. And my thought was, yeah, I'd love to do that. And the opening cutscene of this, has like all these, it's like you see a big tower, and it's like, oh, you're clearly going to have to go after that tower. And it's like, okay, what happened to this place? I'm ready to find out. Who am I? Why is the flesh all fucked up? Like, let's go. And then 30 seconds into this game, it's like, I don't know, you want to solve a sliding block puzzle?
God damn it.
I'm like, what?
Fuck.
Do I what? And then it's like, cool, you solve that.
Are the blocks made of flesh at least?
It is gross. Yes, all the aesthetics of all the puzzles are tremendous.
Great.
Then you solve a block puzzle, and it's like, hey, you want to like manipulate things that kind of look like a railroad track, and so you can get this thing from one area to the next. I'm like, sorta.
Is it a fleshy railroad track?
The railroad track just looks like a railroad track, but you are transporting an egg with a fleshy person inside who is constantly writhing, very upset.
Yeah.
Seems like they're in a lot of pain. And you have to transport that egg to a giant chainsaw that is going to rip them open and also rip open parts of them. Yes, Rob, you have pointed out there is a gun in this game.
That looks like a flesh gun.
Yeah, what the meat gun do?
What the meat gun do?
So so I have played this game for 3 hours, and if you look at the achievements, it seems like I've finished maybe a third of it, maybe a fourth. And there is combat in the sense that at one point a fleshy little creature was crawling along the walls and then wrapped itself around me, and then its tail was a gun that is now imprinted upon my flesh. And it's not a gun as much as it's like you hit the trigger and like it goes, and it like
a
little piece of metal
tongue.
A little metal piece comes out, and occasionally there is an enemy that you can like pop, kind of like a balloon. It's very bizarre. But if you hit the pause menu, it says weapon on the D-pad, says weapon 1, 2, 3, 4, implying at some point in this game I'll have access to a multitude of weapons, which is deeply betrayed by the 3 hours I've spent in the game, which has mostly been fleshy puzzles. So I don't know when this game is going to pivot to like having a weapon wheel, but there's like nothing about it so far that suggests that's where it's going. So I'm very curious what exactly that will mean. Maybe that will actually just be 4 different tools that also have sort of a weapon function. I don't know. I would say so far I'm fairly disappointed in Scorn. It is shares similarities with A Plague Tale, so it's interesting to play them together, in which like the puzzles are fine, but the reason they're fine or even tolerable is mostly because like they look disgusting. Like they are truly upsetting to watch and interact with. But the puzzles themselves, pretty straightforward, stuff you've seen before. And 3 hours of the game, like that's all there is. I'm not saying a game needs to have voice memos and notes, but there is basically no storytelling going on. I feel like I am just exploring a bunch of environments in which they went, we made these pretty environments.
Yeah.
People could run through this in about an hour.
Yeah.
Let's put in some puzzles. Let's grind this out. Like,
because everything here does look extraordinary. Like I'm stunned by like every fucking screenshot. I'm like, this looks like one. It is not my thing. Like I'm not sure I could play a game like this, but it does. Everything looks exquisite.
Yeah, let me see if I can find. So I'm pasting a couple into our chat. So like, you see that little like toilet looking thing? Like that's how I transported the egg before it was cracked open by the chainsaw.
Sure.
The second one is like this
that is a rascal / toilet, honestly.
The other screenshot is like this outdoor landscape with like this really gorgeous it looks very much like again, like imagine Alien and how you'd build other kind of structures out of that aesthetic. It looks awesome, but the game is so far entirely aesthetic. The puzzles aren't bad. They just don't seem additive as much as exists to give the player something to do. The combat is, for what it is wholly uninteresting, and also it just feels like a thing to do. Ren, you...
No, please continue.
Yeah, that's all I have to say. That's kind of where I am on Scorn. It is gorgeous. I am going to keep playing it because I just want to see what other sites they have to show me. But I guess I was just hoping for more from the minute to minute. Again, I don't need voice memos. I don't need scribbled notes. And in some ways, it's kind of interesting that you're just in a space. But I was hoping for a little bit more about like what's going on. Why are we doing this? And I just wish I had a little more to grasp onto other than progress forward. But I will say the aesthetics are enough. For all that told, like it would be the kind of game that I would even implore people, if the aesthetic is interesting to you, and you don't like puzzles, just get a walkthrough. Like, don't even worry about it. Like, it would be worth having the amount of time you spent in this game purely to just see all the animations of you putting your fingers into weird holes and watching the fleshy sacks go around you. It rules. But it does not, at least to this point, elevate beyond that, which is a bit of a bummer. But, I think for the audience that knows what they're in for, and now that my expectations are a little more calibrated having played it, it nails the part that I liked about the trailer. It was like, this seems gross. I would love to explore a very gross space for a set number of hours. And it is accomplishing that task, just unfortunately not much more.
Shall we take a little turn in the question bucket?
Yeah, let's do a little spin around the question bucket.
All right. Liam writes in, so, in response to Ren's scary stories on the Fatal Frame stream and Patrick's request for similar emails, I thought I'd share my own experience of just how creepy rural Ohio can be. For background, I grew up in the ruralish outskirts of Youngstown, Ohio.
Oh my God, this person grew up where I grew up. Sorry, I just got really excited. This is the area that I grew up in. Please continue.
One night around 1 a.m., my friend was driving me home from some high school dance. When we got on my street, which is incredibly dark and incredibly empty this late, we noticed that this approaching car was driving on the wrong side of the road. This by itself was unnerving, so my friend pulls off onto a side road and idles to let this car pass. But the car turns off on the side road with us. We could have tried to just wait for the car to pass by us still, but the vibes are incredibly bad at this point. So my friend just starts driving, hoping that if we make a few turns, the car will be gone. This, of course, doesn't happen. As we make more turns and the car continues to follow, my friend starts driving faster and faster, and this person more or less matches our speed. Soon enough, we were both speeding down these dark, windy streets. After about 10 minutes of us getting increasingly deep in this jumbled network of side roads, we get a little ahead of this person and break line of sight, though we know we're still on the same road. We look for another turn to hopefully lose this person for good when we realize that the street we are on had no outlet. Absolutely losing it at this point, realize we don't have enough time to turn around and take an earlier turn before the car catches us up. So I tell my friend to pull off into a nearby driveway while the car still hasn't seen us and turn off the car and all the lights. The driveway is pretty long and it curved around the house, so our car was slightly obscured. But we could see as this car appears and drives slowly down the street, stopping at each individual driveway. The car stops at the house we are at and lingers for noticeably longer. Our seats are reclined to hide us better. We aren't talking. We're just sitting there in silent terror. Then eventually, they move on. It's no outlet, though, so we wait for them to come back around. A couple dreadfully long minutes later, we hear a car screeching, and this person just rips by and heads back toward the way we came, seemingly angry that they lost us. We wait a bit to make sure they aren't still lingering or driving up and down the street. Then we head home, just dreading every car that we pass. Obviously, I never found out what any of that was about. It could easily have just been someone fucking with us, but it sure felt like I was being stalked by some horror movie killer, and I still think about that night whenever I'm back in the area and driving to my family home late at night. As always, fuck capitalism and fuck turfs, Liam. Wow.
Ohio, baby. Ohio, baby. This is deeply resonant. This resonates with Renata.
I remember, hearing some of the really malicious pranks that you'd hear about at high school that kids would get up to. One of them was like putting on, they're doing around Halloween, and sometimes not at Halloween, but put on Halloween masks and would go to people's doorbells, and then just like a group of people, like high schoolers, basically, like wearing Halloween masks and just stand there silently while someone answered the door, or doing something like this where you would essentially stalk someone in a car until they like turned into a driveway, clearly trying to pretend it was their driveway and hoping you would go away. Like, all I can think about is the stories I would hear about folks getting in trouble pulling shit like that, hearing the story, in which it sounds like just a bunch of pieces of shit going, you know, it'd be cool, scaring the shit out of someone.
Yeah. Mortifying.
Yeah, there's people who do that shit. And there's also like there are just drivers out there who are out of their goddamn minds, effectively. Like there are people who like will get it into their head, like, you know, when I see stuff like that, when I hear a story about like that, for instance, like there are people who do reckless shit on the road, I think in part hoping to provoke a reaction so that then they can like engage with someone and just like harass the shit out of them and like try to scare the shit out of them in a car. And yeah, these people, yeah, they scare the shit out of me because you're just like, you become acutely aware of like, you're on the road with someone who is just completely lost their shit and is entertaining, like they're wanting something to happen. And it always feels like I have no idea, like I don't know where this is gonna go. Yeah, the couple times like stuff similar to that has happened, which has been a little closer to road ragey stuff, but it's always like always raised a lot of questions. But this is a hell of a story, Liam.
I mean, like, yeah, the person you're describing is the person who understands that cars are machines that can kill people. And that is the last thing you want anyone to recognize about a tool that they have access to.
Yeah. Yeah. We have an email here from Trevor. Hey, Wapesters. On a recent episode, Rob mentioned an inexpensive, sweet coffee cake-like treat his family used to acquire at the grocery store. By his description, I think he might be talking about panettone. This is something I used to find in grocery stores in the city where I spent my 20s, but haven't been able to find it since moving away. Hope I could help you find a piece of your youth, or failing that, find a new, relatively expensive dessert. Keep on pointing, Trevor. This is not it. So,
Damn.
it is circle, but it is. This is big. This is big, circular. It's like a giant cupcake, is what they're showing. This is what the panettones that I'm pulling up look like. Somebody else did write in with like basically the thing, but they found. So I'll just read this email. Tony writes, on the most recent podcast, when you all were talking about favorite pastries, Rob brought up a pastry he didn't know what to call, and as soon as he described it, I went, "Oh, he's talking about coffee cake." Then a few seconds later, he specifically said it wasn't coffee cake, which didn't seem right. So I did an image search for coffee cake, and what came up was definitely not what my mental image of coffee cake was. A couple pages down, I did find my coffee cake, a long rectangular pastry dish drizzled with white frosting and crumbled toppings, most commonly found at Ultra at 10:30 a.m. on a Sunday after church. Ultra is the grocery store, now a chain that is now defunct, but was in my part of Indiana back
Ultra?
then. Yeah.
No idea. Never heard
Well,
of
they
this.
wouldn't have had an Ultra in Barrington or North Burbs, I think is generally like
Okay.
like
Didn't make it
Ultra
that
was.
far.
No, it was more Ultra was like if you couldn't afford to shop at Jewel, you went to
Oh,
Ultra.
wow. Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
So this
Because Jewel
was
wasn't
like,
it wasn't exactly fancy living.
where I lived.
either.
Jewel was the nice grocery store.
Really
Yes.
interesting.
We went to Ultra, but Ultra had the pastry department that made stuff like this. But so they found, though, the reason they found this was image search dug it up. And this is a very, you'll see what I mean here. So these are the coffee cakes. And what we are looking at is Fleckenstein's Bakery, a small chain, 4 stores
Mm-hmm.
in Illinois, a bakery that makes coffee cakes exactly like what I am describing. The photos on their website are exactly
Holy
what I'm
shit.
finding. They're cream filled round. Another thing I would find all the time growing up. Haven't seen that anywhere. Looking at this, I almost want to say like Finkelstein's must have supplied a bunch of this to places around where I lived. But I also think maybe Finkelstein's just one of the last places standing that makes what just used to be like a standard like Chicagoland coffee cake.
Mm-hmm.
But this is it. Like this gallery of screenshots we're looking of pictures we're looking at. That's it. The difference is their chocolate chip coffee cake has chocolate frosting, which I regard as heretical. That's too much chocolate. The white frosting and the chocolate. This is probably the key balance. But this is it. And so, if people, we'll post a link to this, I think, with the podcast, because we need to, Patrick, you'll need to post this on the Waypoint account, in fact, because we need to know what is the actual name for this kind of pastry. Because obviously coffee cake just means like, what is the coffee cake by region that like people in that area, that's their coffee cake.
So you're thinking they're calling it coffee cake because that's what people would know, but that you think there is a more hyper-specific reference.
I think there must be something else that this is that we just do not know the name of.
All right.
But, and what's killing me is they have a little like, they refer to, you can do online orders at this place, but their site is broken. I can't do online orders. Otherwise I would be like, send me all the coffee cake you can. I was tempted this last weekend to call them and beg them for the recipe.
So a little bit of Ren background is that I worked at a diner / confectionery that had a version, like not this pastry, but was the Fleckenstein's bakery of a couple different kinds of candy, where we were the only people who made it, and people would be like, what the fuck is this called? And we would be like, oh yeah, it's this. And they were like, this is not the word for any of this. This is so confusing. And it was basically the one place you can get a couple of things, which is why Charlie Sheen, Martin Sheen. Martin Sheen is known for ordering from the diner I used to work at, because they're the only place you can get that kind of candy. These places exist across the country and are so weird, and I find them endlessly fascinating.
Yeah, and the thing that always sticks with me is when I grew up, every bakery department at different grocery stores had their version of this, but they weren't like, it wasn't all like what's in this picture. They definitely were not ordering en masse from the one place that makes this. It's just this, now what was like a widely distributed regional dessert now exists apparently vestigially in New Lenox, Illinois, and nowhere else that I can find. Because like I remember they carried this at Jewel until Jewel shut down their pastry department, their bakery department, and started like buying it was just like Sara Lee and Entenmann's goods now being sold through their pastry department. But like there used to be all those regional places like Strachan Van Til's and such that had their own bakeries. So the search continues, but I am going to reclaim the coffee cake of my youth. Once I do, we're going to buy a domain, memorialize that recipe, and Chicagoland chocolate chip coffee cake for all.
This is Rob's midlife crisis.
No, the midlife crisis is the car for sure.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's the car.
Yeah, ongoing.
Can't wait to hear about the car again on a balcony in New York.
Oh yeah. All right. So, Tressa writes, this story takes place in October of 2020, back when pandemic restrictions were in full swing. Me and my girlfriend were having a regular date night. We're having regular date nights at an outdoor drive-in theater that had started up over the pandemic. It was close to Halloween, so they were doing a bunch of scary movie double features. Important to note that this drive-in theater was just an empty lot in the boonies with a big projector screen and speakers. Nice. Basically, isn't that just a drive-in? Anyway.
Yeah, but like a lot of these popped up. Like, people need a place to go. And and so they would go to like in places like Illinois, like we have big swaths of like farmland and like sort of thing, and just erect a screen and then like have people come, or an abandoned parking lot, you know, like a lot of this popped up over COVID. There was one we almost went to, but it was always too late to make sense for the kids.
Versus like the local radio station drive-in.
Right.
Where they actually have the real tech to
Yeah.
let your car speakers do the thing.
So basically no streetlights, far from any main roads, perfect for movies, and also you can see the stars super clearly. The double feature we went to see was The Nun and La Llorona, a couple of very fun, bad, cheesy horror movies that I enjoy. We were about halfway
That's
through
the
La
correct
Llorona.
assessment of those films.
Nothing scary is happening on screen, but suddenly I start hearing people murmuring and gasping. I was like, did I miss something in the movie? But then I look out the car window only to see a large triangle of flickering lights very, very slowly falling from the sky in formation before blinking out one by one. It legit looked like a Star Destroyer entering the atmosphere for a few seconds, and then it was gone. Everyone kind of got over it after a little while, since nothing had like exploded, and went back to watching the movie. It was really weird. I was a little shook, to be honest. Come to find out the next day, it was apparently just a bunch of Elon's SpaceX garbage plummeting into the Pacific Ocean. Take some of the mystique out of it, but I guess billionaires were the true horror all along. That's all you do. Fuck capitalism, especially Elon Musk. Go home.
Incredible. Ideal outcome.
Well, yeah, we were asked people to write in their spooky stories when we were doing the Fatal Frame stream, and this one, that's so good because in a world where they didn't see that headline, then like this could like live. It's the kind of story you're telling for decades, right? Like you're like, oh, that time we were at the movie,
and everyone saw it. Everyone saw it.
Everyone saw it. Yeah. You go like, okay, no, talk to Jeff. Jeff was there. Jeff was also at the drive-through, you know, and it's almost unfortunate that they found out that space capitalism was the result.
Graham.
So our last email comes from N. I'm writing you this email after hearing you mention Server-Queues in episode 514. As a serial Path of Exile player, Server-Queues is something that I meet every 3 months at the start of a new league. Time of league start is known in advance, so all 50 to 100,000 players are logged in at once, trying to secure their place and get into the game first. It became such a huge part of launch experience that there was a minor uproar when several streamers were allowed instant access to bypass the queue, as it gave them a small 5 to 10 minute advantage in accompanying racing events. A year ago, developers made a mistake of doing on-the-fly database conversion for every player logging in, which caused players to get stuck, unable to log in for hours, and took 12 hours to fix. If some people did not care about login queues before, well, they do now. Even now, when I skip a season, I still take a minute or two to check out a couple of streams to see if developer servers, yet again, are on fire from 100,000 action RPG fans trying to get that sweet new loot. That trivia out of the way, here's my question. Did any of you ever encounter some non-directed incidental part of the game that became an integral part of the experience? And from Russia.
Non-directed.
Where you make a, you know, in a different way, like where you make a game out of a thing that's not part of the game. I couldn't think of one off the top of.
No, I think mine would be like similar stuff. Like the infrastructure around MMOs at their height tends to breed this kind of stuff for sure.
I think this kind of thing has fizzled out a little bit, or become less frequent, and so I haven't encountered. I also don't play much multiplayer stuff, like massively multiplayer stuff, and so I think that I am rarely encountering it.
Actually here would be my answer. Boot discs back in the day were a never-ending project of like, how can I fit my computer into the shape of the vessel that this game wants it to be.
I mean, to explain, like, this is far more from you that it's like actually worth explaining what I went this is how I got Dark Forces to run on my 486, but like essentially you could use a boot disk and you'd boot into DOS, and then you would configure this boot disk to right, so you could also do it at start, right? And it would be a temporary configuration of the PC, but then you could save that so that you could just like, you could preload that into the machine going forward. But essentially it's like turning off various parts of the machine to like free up RAM.
Yes.
Usually it was RAM. RAM was like such a precious resource, and that it's like today where it's like your game will run better. Like back then it was the game won't run. And so I remember like with Dark Forces specifically, I don't think I had boot disk, but like a lot of times it was me with like a notebook that was like yes, no, yes, no,
Yes.
yeah, you know, like what order of operations is
Incredible.
gonna get me to get the game to run. And then sometimes because you could get the game to run faster if you like could, it was a puzzle in and of itself. So you'd either like read on a message like a BBS or something like here's like a more effective way to do it, or it'd be like, if I switch these things up, I wonder if I can eke out a little bit more RAM. Like, do you not want your sound card? Do you want to play this game silent? Because then maybe the game will run.
Well, and the other part was sometimes, usually it was memory, but sometimes it was like there's a hardware conflict happening somewhere here, and so
IRQ is the sound stuff, right? That's
and so like to sort of like drain the swamp to like figure out, okay, what could the things be that are causing this issue? You would just start like turning off parts of your machine to see like, well, now will it run? Now where's the conflict? And I think part of it was you would start taking a perverse sort of pleasure in like, time to maintain my boot disk. Time to fix up the old boot disk.
Computers never should have changed from this. I think they should have gotten stronger, but not better. I love this world you're describing. This is awful. I love it.
F8. Is F8 what you would hit? Was that universal? This is like triggering a keyboard memory for me.
I think it might depend on what BIOS you were using.
Yeah, that's probably motherboard specific.
Yeah, but in general, it was like one of
I think mine was F8 to get it. And you could only hit it in that brief window where like, you hit power, it was beep boop, and then it's like before...
This is the thing where this is the vestigial part of the experience is like when you're like building a new computer or something, a lot of times part of installing Windows or doing
Flashing
this at some
BIOS.
point you will be going back to these systems. But you only have to do it once. And then the computer will be set up and you forget that all that stuff is still there. But that shit is like, that is what remains of the structure that DOS was built on that you were constantly in there fucking with to try and make games work.
Yeah.
Windows Explorer, I'm going to need you to take a back seat. I need 12 more frames in this Valorant match real quick. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's not dissimilar. Like the somewhat modern version of that would be like in Windows 90. When does Windows introduce like, control, where you can like go in and like force close programs and stuff
Task
like
manager?
that. Yeah, like it's the ancient version of the task manager, which is like what is taking up my CPU, sort of thing. It's not dissimilar. Like where you're just like force quitting, and then you're wondering like, well, probably shouldn't force quit this. What does this do? Will this break Windows while I'm playing? Like I remember doing that with like early Windows 95, 98, as games were making the transition to DirectX. And also having similar technical struggles. Like sometimes it was managing literal task manager to see if you could get a game to usually boot, but it's like, can I get terminal velocity to run a little bit faster?
Yeah. I haven't thought about that game in ages.
Yeah, that did not come with Windows, but I think a demo did. I can't remember, but I remember playing that a lot.
Anyway, so that will be a wrap for today's episode of Waypoint Radio. If you want more from Waypoint, you can follow us on Twitter at Waypoint, Facebook and YouTube, Waypoint Vice. You can follow me on Twitter at Rob Zachney. Patrick, where can people find you?
At Patrick Klepek.
Ren.
You can follow me on Twitter at Ren or Raven.
And hey, once again, don't forget Save Point. This week, just a couple days from when you're listening to this, we're going to be starting on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern and going until Friday night. So the 19th to the 21st. Check all that out. And let's see. I think you can also check out what we've been publishing lately on waypoint.vice.com. Ren just wrote up a piece about the harassment, the latest harassment lawsuit with Activision-Blizzard. Obviously we're going to be streaming a whole bunch for Save Point, but in addition to that, if you just want more Waypoint, you can go to waypointplus.com and subscribe. That gives you access to our premium feed, and you're also helping support Waypoint and everything else we do here And if you want to take that extra step, you can go to waypointgeneralstore.com and buy some of our fine Waypoint merch. Our theme music is by Bowen. The track is Miss You off the EP Pale Machine. Learn more at waypoint.zone/BOEN. For now, we are calling time on this Monday's podcast. We will talk to you again for Save Point, really. Until then, fuck capitalism. Go home. Watch Save Point.
Also, at some point, Cado left because they had to go do a thing, which is why Cado disappeared.
Bye forever, Cado.